half my life in competitive soccer, and I've competed at some of the top levels it has to offer. To get there, my world consisted of working hard both as a player and a teammate. I knew the harder I worked, the greater the victory. I always said I wanted to play soccer in college, so I worked hard and received a full ride. Actually, this year I was inducted into the U of I Hall of Fame. Soccer had been my life for so long that once graduation approached, I didn't know what I was going to do. But through all my hard work, I was recruited to play for a top women's professional club in Sweden. The point I'm getting towards is I've always had total control of where my life was going and what I was able to achieve through pure drive, determination, a strong work ethic, and focus. However, there was nothing my 23-year soccer career could do to prepare me for the challenges of starting a family. Don't get me wrong, I had boyfriends throughout the years. I knew what it would actually take. But I did tell my mom in 2001 that I gave guys up for Lent and I never went back. My wife Jess and I got married in October of 2016. There she is. And shortly after that, we began talking about adding to our family, except this time it would be with human babies, not another dog or cat. There was just one really important thing missing from our equation: sperm. And actually, Carrie Rosso, front row here, tried to make me take the word sperm out. But it is what it is, and that's what it's called. And I find it extremely funny that the straight girl has a bigger problem with the word sperm than the lesbian. Obviously, neither one of us had the equipment to provide sperm. So we made an appointment with Dr. Faye and her nurses here in Champaign to learn about all our options. We talked about having a known donor versus an anonymous donor, and we learned the pros and cons of each. But each of these came with an extremely different price tag. And we were rookies in the department, and we had no idea what we were doing. But we really didn't think it would be easier and expensive, but we were a bit shocked to learn that we probably would need to budget for about $30,000 before insurance would kick in. So super long story short, actually the very next day after the appointment, a friend of mine offered to donate his swimmers to Jess and I. And I'm a big believer of signs, and it was really hard for me to not see this as a sign. Jess needed a little bit more convincing than I did, but once legal documentation was drawn up, it seemed like we'd secured that missing piece. Like I said before, we were total rookies in this department in a lot of ways. So since we chose the less expensive route and we were doing this on our own, we had to try to figure out how to get pregnant. So I downloaded an app to track my period. And let's be honest, for the last 17 years, I haven't had to track anything. Anyways, this app told us everything we needed to know about ovulation, which I didn't even know when that occurred in my cycle. It told us when the best times were and the best days. We needed about a month or two to figure out my cycle and how to time it with our donors. You know, donation. So we made a plan for that February, and that's exactly where our fertility journey started. To say the donation part was awkward would be an understatement of the century. But bless his heart, the donor would come over to our house, do his business in a collection cup that we provided. It was not our everyday drinking cups. Then Jess would wait for the door to shut, and it was go time. So, it's been an extremely long time since we've been with guys. And you can just imagine, love of my life, fourth row right there, holding a cup of Swimmers, trying not to spill, a fancy turkey baster in the other hand, and gagging uncontrollably all while we're trying to make a baby. So come the second week in March, we take a pregnancy test together, and it shows a plus sign. We both were super shocked because who would have thought it could be that easy? Jess really didn't believe the positive sign, so we had to drive to a different town to purchase those ones that say pregnant in big bold letters. So fast forward to our first ultrasound. Neither one of us knew what to expect because neither one of us have ever done this before. But we were super pumped to hear the baby's heartbeat for the first time. All I could remember was how rude the ultrasound technician was. He took pictures, but he didn't say a word. And at one point, I went and turned back and looked at Jess, who I kind of think knew what was going on the entire time, but I just couldn't wrap my head around what was happening. He sent us up to meet with our nurse practitioner, and Jess said in the elevator, "Well, how do you think that went?" And all I could say was, "Not well." And as soon as our nurse came to the door to call us back, I saw it in her face, that this would not be the news we were looking for. There was no heartbeat. I couldn't even tell you what happened at this appointment to this day because it's still a blur. All I gathered was that the D&C would be scheduled for April 13th. And this goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning. Throughout my soccer career, working hard and doing what I had to do resulted in great success. But fertility would be something I would soon realize that was totally and completely out of my control. And for anyone who knows me here in the crowd, I don't do well in those types of scenarios. So while we're waiting the recommended time before we try again, I had an unfortunate accident where a guy accidentally cut off 2 of my fingertips in a wood splitter, which is completely unrelated. But it was pretty significant because I was starting to feel more out of control of what was going on in my life versus what our goals actually were. So Jess and I would try again in June and July, and come the second weekend in August, we had a second positive pregnancy test. So many thoughts and emotions, feelings were flying through our heads. Again, we were so excited, but something inside me felt scared. There was no explanation as to why I had the first one, so I was worried it was going to happen again. And I was right. My second D&C would be scheduled for August 31st. And all I could think was, what's wrong with me? Why is this happening to us? We're good people and we can provide a great life for a baby. And over the next several months, it became very hard for me and us. I don't think I ever allowed myself to process the 2 miscarriages and losing my fingertips all in 4 months. But I quickly learned how common they were. Many of my coworkers' wives had been through it, and actually many people we knew had been through it. But it made me wonder, why does no one ever talk about this? And why does no one warn you that it could happen? I was very angry, upset, and frustrated with our journey. And this would only continue. But I will tell you, it made me realize a lot about myself, and it made Jess and I a stronger team. We had to learn how to communicate about what happened, just so I could sort through and process it all. And I'm sure Jess got sick of talking about the same thing over and over, but she always listened. And I also was open to talking about it with others. It didn't make it easier for me to think about having these miscarriages, but it made me feel like I could help others get through it because it could be something that they never talked about aloud before. Perhaps we women are thinking we're failures in some ways, But as cliche as this sounds, everything happens for a reason. And you may never know this reason. But there's a plan for everyone and everything. And through all this, I have just had to learn patience, which is not in my top 5 qualities. So throughout the next year, we switched donors. We tried at home one more time, which didn't work. So then we decided to take a more clinical approach, which resulted in 3 failed IUIs. I couldn't believe Jess could get me pregnant twice at home with a fancy turkey baster we bought online. But for some reason, these IUIs weren't working. But I soon would find out the possible reasons during my first round of IVF. In that initial ultrasound, it was noted that I had a cyst left over from one of the follicles from my last IUI. But this wasn't alarming because it's something that should dissipate on its own. So I had taken shots for about a week and a half, and I found it very uncomfortable to sit normal. In fact, I had to sort of lean to the left to even sit down. And I can't remember the scientific name of the cyst, but it was basically consuming all the medicine from the shots, making it bigger than my uterus. Again, something I have absolutely no control over, but this time it was even harder for me to process and accept. I'm a police officer with the University of Illinois Police Department. And I had to submit a doctor's note to my upper command to switch my schedule from third shift hours, which is 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., to normal day shift hours. And this is not an easy thing to do in shift work where your schedule is determined by your seniority. In fact, it was so not easy. My department denied 3 doctor's notes before sending me to the disability office, who approved the 4th. Not only were my doctors baffled by this, but I was just as surprised. But in the meantime, I'm supposed to stay stress-free this entire time. So, when the doctor went in to remove the cyst, he found I had some endometriosis, I had some scar tissue, and my left ovary and fallopian tube were adhered to my uterine wall. But he did tell Jess he gave me a 20,000-mile tune-up, and that way we would get pregnant the next go-round. We're still on this journey, and I realize this may be short compared to what others have experienced or are currently going through. But I guess the reason I chose to talk about this is because no one really does. And I want women to know it's okay to talk about it, even though it's super uncomfortable to do so. We're having a girl, and she's due June 6th. And we listen to her heartbeat every night before bed, which is truly the best sound I've ever heard. Hands down, this has been the hardest journey I've ever experienced, mainly because I've had no control of the process and I don't know the outcome. I will say I can't imagine experiencing this with anyone else. Jess is the best teammate anyone could ask for. She makes me a better person, she makes me stronger and a better communicator. I know I have not been easy to deal with through this whole process. And even though I'm pregnant now, I still continue to be extremely difficult. But I do usually try to blame it on the hormones, hoping for a free pass, but I don't think she's buying that anymore. I get nervous for every appointment, every blood test result, and every ultrasound because it's such an emotional, physical, and mental roller coaster. We've experienced a lot together, from the initial donation to hundreds of shots and hearing our baby's heartbeat for the first time together. But with all these struggles, I'm still so thankful to have gone through what we have together. We're looking forward to meeting baby Hazel.